It should alert you that I've started the recording. Thank you for being here, and we would love to understand how you might have heard about our webinar series. You can put that into the chat. It's always better for us to understand how we're reaching people, if it was LinkedIn, if it was advertising, if it was an email, or was it from a friend. Always trying to improve our ability to communicate about our informative educational opportunities. So you can put your questions in the chat, and so you don't lose train of thought. But we are also open to questions during the presentation because we have less people here. And we're looking for a little bit more of that informal ability as if we were all sitting in a room doing a focus group. So don't worry about the idea of putting all your questions in chat until later. All right, here we are. The importance of the circular economy practices for your building tenants. This is part of our webinar series that is specifically meant for building tenants and understanding the benefits. And our speaker today, our presenter, is Yanni Lutz. Yanni, somehow your first name got missed on that pasting in. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I think you have it later. No worries.
Great. And then the other expert here is the published guide, the Circular Economy Guide for Commercial Real Estate, done by BOMA Canada. And Yanni has just informed me that there is an updated version, and there is a link in the chat for you to get later. So we can look forward to learning more with that new version. So a little bit about who we are. The ClimateWise Building Challenge is specifically for York Region. It is a friendly awards and recognition competition. It is based on reducing energy consumption and greenhouse gas in buildings. And our main focus is through collaboration, education, and innovation. And our webinar series especially is trying to promote the piece on collaboration through tenant and landlord relationships. So the competition, the Building Challenge, is free of cost and open to all owners, landlords, managers. And in the tenant space, we have a good segue into our up and coming program where tenants get recognition as well. So stay tuned for that. And we do this to combat climate change while improving your bottom line, because we can see from our case studies that it does impact your bottom line, and it is a good news story. So, and that also will be around changing behavioral practices and developing a culture. So we use this theme of a roadmap toward your goals. And so we are seeking solutions to achieve reduction targets by really getting a little deeper into the very concept of waste, which can be called circular economy, although I will note that circular economy is much more than just about waste. It's about, there's no such word as waste. It's about value for what used to be called waste, and not having any waste because we repurpose and reinvent and reimagine. So simply, waste is not a byproduct that must be disposed of at the end of its life, but rather a resource that continues to generate value. So we will lay the groundwork for these principles in this presentation. What do we want to accomplish today? We want you to have a better understanding about the practices within your building operations and management to find these incredibly important benefits. So, operating costs, procurement, disposal costs, engagement with tenants and employees, top priority. Innovation and differentiator, being brave and courageous to get out in front and try new things so that you can be a leader in this movement, and to mitigate exposure to risk. So we are now going to move forward with closing the loop and move into our presentation with our expert, Yanni Lutz. Yanni, would you like to introduce yourself here rather than?
Of course. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Audrey. Hello, everybody. It's really exciting for me to be here in Circular Economy Month. So it all comes together pretty nicely. So I joined the BOMA Canada team at the beginning of the year. My role with the BOMA Canada team is as Senior Director. I oversee sustainability and technical programs within our organization. For those of you who are familiar with the BOMA-based program, that's the work that I oversee, and we're currently developing content for the new version of BOMA-based. We call it BOMA-based 4.0 that we're rolling out next year. So within that content update, there's a lot of discussions that are happening across the board around sustainability, but procurement practices, waste management practices, and how that should be reframed from a circular economy perspective comes up in a lot of our conversations. And then the other thing that I wanted to, so that just gives you a little bit of background about my work. Before I joined BOMA Canada, I had spent time on the consulting side. So I'm and where I was both implementing projects when it comes to certification pursuits, whether it's BOMA based or LEED. And then the other thing that happened was we had also did energy management work and things like that. So it was a very nice time and a transition for me to move from BOMA or from my consulting side to BOMA Canada. So that's, I think, in a nutshell.
Very good. Thank you very much, Yani. We'll move on to the beginning of what is the circular economy. Would you like to speak to these slides?
Yes,
Yani?
of course. Yes. So what this slide shows you is the three principles that underline circular economy. We're looking at both designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural systems. So to elaborate a little bit on how these three principles are combined and what it looks like, within the paradigm of circularity, waste is seen as a resource that continues to generate value. As Audrey explained at the outset, products are designed to last, to be reused, repaired, and manufactured. And it really asks us to think differently about how a product is used, how it's packaged, and how it's treated once its current use has been fulfilled. So the value of the resource is retained over its life cycle. We are looking to, as Audrey said, eliminate the very concept of waste. And so what does that mean in your world? It's from something as small as the lunch that you bring to the office, to the office supplies that you procure, looking at how am I going to reuse this equipment and this furniture, how is it being assembled? Can it be disassembled? Can I share it with other tenants? All of those ideas become much more prominent in the discussions. And then as you apply this lens of circular economy to all your procurement practices and the way that we use resources, there's obvious benefits that actually are related to those. And, we've listed six of the main benefits there. Really looking at the reduction in operation and maintenance costs. So, what you can do through preventative maintenance practices and looking at supplier take-back models. I mentioned repairability. Then it's also the benefit is how driving forward circular economy principles actually aligns with your organization's strategic objectives. So there's those benefits as well. There's an opportunity to mitigate risks. So risk that we're talking about here is, when you're using virgin resources to create products that are still in a good enough state to be used, there's price volatility associated with that. We are also looking to, by attempting to reduce slightly the demand on new and new products to minimize the carbon impact of those. So that's the risks that we can mitigate through those processes. Also looking at the circularity of product use, we're increasing occupant health by, looking at the concentration of pollutants in offices, and that then leads to improvements in workforce performance. People are just happier. It's a more healthy space that you're working in. And then the part that's particularly of interest in today's discussion is the opportunity that it affords, just having a conversation around circular economy, that it affords the opportunity to engage with our occupants. And from a landlord perspective, I remember 10, 15 years ago, it's always the topics of energy, water, waste, and waste is such a tactile way and an immediate way for tenants to voice their concerns about the landlord's practices, but then also demand better and more thoughtful practices in terms of how waste is separated at the source, what the landlord is doing to support reduction of waste that's being generated at the site. So tenants can play a significant role in this area to engage also with the landlords and open up the avenues for communication. And then, the long-term benefit, of course, is enhancing innovation, looking at you're improving the long-term value of the product. And by demonstrating the implementation of these innovative practices, you're also much more competitive and, in the market, and people want to talk to you and have conversations with you about the practices that you're leading. You can move to the next slide there.
We go.
So, the question then is, you've now interested in knowing, you understand the principles and the benefits, you're sold on the idea, and the question then becomes, well, how do you put these into action? And I'll just briefly go over the opportunities that are available here. So from a construction, renovation, retrofit, I think there's great opportunity for tenants here. This is really the realm. If you're looking at a fit out in your space, you can really get into the conversation around circularity, the way that you procure, the way that the project is designed, whether you are going to be selecting furniture that has been reused, or whether you are going to source new furniture. That will all dictate how your floor plans are designed. So from the outset, you can actually put those principles and objectives forward in the design process of the new space. When you are working with your design team to set up procurement strategies, you want to ask them about, how materials are being tracked. Are we thinking about, well, once our use of this product has ended, once the life cycle from our perspective is done, what happens to the product after that? So it's what they call the second life of the product, or its material passport, that we care about what happens with the things that we brought into the space after it leaves the space. Again, back to that whole idea of circularity, that we're not thinking of a product as waste anymore. It can be a useful resource for the next user group down the line. There's, on the food and catering side, again, from a tenant perspective, a lot you can do if you are providing facilities within your tenant space around just having central locations where all of the same types of waste packaging can be collected. Then you work with the landlord so that that all of the food packaging is properly sorted and taken to the right hauler, that it's not bundled. Once you may be diligent at source to be how you are splitting out the waste sources, but then the other part is that you can work on looking at solutions, work with your landlord in that regard. Then the other thing is on the building operations, repair and maintenance side. again, that's working with your landlord. And depending on which type of tenant you are, if you're in an office situation, the landlord is managing everything, then I would say the question is, see what you can do to have a conversation. What is the landlord doing to be proactive in that field? If you as a tenant have ownership and manage certain things, you can ask about installing sub-metering to your space. How is the electricity being managed? How is the water being, what can you do to reduce use of those things? Then from a food catering perspective, I think we covered that piece, and utilities is covered under the landlord discussion. The one thing that I did want to, and I think, Audrey, we can elaborate a bit more when we get into case studies, but you will also, the second guide that Audrey mentioned has a couple of case studies there, but one of the initiatives that I thought was pretty interesting, as well as what they talk about how, as part of these vendor take back programs, people start to think differently about that you're not purchasing a product, but you're purchasing a service. And so a lot of, or there's some organizations now that instead of selling you their product, they will say, well, let us take care of our product, engage us to deliver a service for you. So, and we can dig a little bit deeper into that, but that's for me a pretty exciting new way of looking at how you procure with things that you need. I think that's the one thing I should mention also is lease agreements. So there's also mechanisms such as those where the landlord can look at engaging in a more active discussion with their tenant to say, where the landlords, and that is what we're advocating for on the BOMA-based content development side, where our criteria applies to tenants, to landlords, and then to say to the landlords, what mechanisms do you have? What leverage do you have to bring your occupants and tenants on board? And what's come up in conversations is that, through lease renewals, lease updates, all of you must have heard about, green leases and the terminology that's forever being updated, and all in an effort to bring these principles to the forefront in our decision making. You can go to the next slide. So then next steps for industry. So as I mentioned, talking through the benefits, tenants have a significant impact on waste practices within a building, from improving at the source, through separation practices there to the reduction. And what we have on the slide here are the different areas where opportunity exists. And on the procurement side, as I mentioned to you, if you're looking to fit out a space or any service or product that you're procuring across your organization, if you look at it through the circular economy lens, the idea is that you are looking at solutions that help you keep the resources within the supply chain, avoid creating waste across the project's life or the product's life cycle. So really engaging with the manufacturer in that exercise to understand how they are managing the product as well. And, I would say start with something that is a purchase that you make repeatedly, and look at the things where you think, which products will I have big impacts. You will be surprised just starting to have a conversation what solutions might arise. And I'm again going to say, when we get to case studies, there's some exciting solutions there. That Audrey can get into. On the waste management side, as we've said, what we've learned on the BOMA-based side as well, procurement practices with the waste haulers, understanding how the waste haulers are going about their waste management practices. So you want to know that the data that you're receiving is making sense, the way that they are whether they're weighing the bins or counting bins, how are they actually coming up with the weights of your waste? Is it a true reflection of your waste streams in the profile of, or the product use in your space? And then how are what we get into as well is the whole transportation aspect. That gets more into the carbon and decarbonization discussion. But when you as a tenant are deciding which spaces you're going to lease, which particularly when it comes to light industrial, the location becomes very important, because that's going to drive how far you are transporting waste. And the less waste you have, it's not just in the circularity aspect. There are other sustainability solutions and benefits as well in that process. And then the benefit as buildings as a materials bank. So construction product, as I said, this selecting materials, modular or disassembly. We were on a call recently with the Research Council and they're looking into decarbonization, but from a new design and an existing building perspective. And one of the participants was all about modular design. I thought it was really interesting from an embodied carbon perspective that they felt that was really the future of design, and retrofits and rebuild is to find modular solutions, because it's programmed in disassembly, and reuse is programmed into the whole design of that product. So the more tenants demand it, the more benefit people will gain, or the more it will become more cost effective, and more solutions are available to you. And then buildings as enablers and anchors. I think there's being in the real estate, it's just a melting pot for so many different aspects of things of our lives, from a social value, equity, spaces where people are can share lessons learned. As Audrey and I were preparing for this session, a lot of the examples she mentioned was also, it's not just practices that you do at the office, you take it home. And, it has far-reaching implications. What you learn, you can definitely spread the word in that way, to share and understand solutions. And then buildings as regenerators, supporting the restoration. So it's not just within the building itself, but it's also within the landscape around it, the habitats that we are supporting, the biodiversity we in many cases almost reintroducing. So so all of those opportunities exist. I think could probably go on and on. But so that's just a summary to give people a sense of the benefits. So so what happened when we concluded? So this guide that we issued we issued that in last year, 2020, and then after that we conducted a survey, and I don't know, Audrey, whether you have the slide of that shows the pie charts. It just
there you go. It's probably easier.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So what we were really very happy to see the volume of response we get this kind of response and engagement was really positive for us to see. It's not just that the data, that the results are so useful. It's also with that response, it tells us that that this is a topic that really matters to industry. So the pie chart on your left shows the different titles of the survey respondents. So it shows the and as I think when we were engaging the community, it was mostly coming from the landlord side. I would we didn't distinguish in the survey who of those are landlords and tenants, but my interpretation is that for the most part it would represent the landlord body. But what I thought was interesting is and positive is that the largest piece of the pie by the sustainability managers. That's great to see. I also love that we have a good representation from both building managers and senior executives. So almost 3/4 of the respondents are at a pretty, call it senior level and engaged in the sustainability discussion. So it means that when we're asking them about their understanding around circular economy, we get a very good sense of what the uptake is in the market. And as you can see in the pie chart on your right, that then shows that, we have and I think that's the natural curve that you see in any engagement journey. You have your early adopters and the people who are fully engaged. And you were hoping, and I would say that 16% is approaching critical mass, particularly if you think that this is results from last year. Like if we have enough of that uptake, I think when we get to about the 20%, that's when you think, okay, we're now gaining momentum. And I can say that just in the work that I've been doing with BOMA Canada, that it's definitely reaching that point now where, that 16%, I think if we did that survey now, it I would guess to the 25 to 30%. So people are becoming much more educated in this field, more understanding. I think the climate experiences we're having, the the impact of COVID on the supply and demand challenges make people think differently about products. So all of those things are important indicators of where things are going, and that circularity is a priority aspect to think about. Yeah, and then what I did want to mention, and I didn't, I think now is probably a good time, but for those of you, if you haven't had a chance to look at our guide.
I need to verify.
Excuse me.
Can everyone please be on mute if they're not asking a question? Nope. Did we lose Jenny? Oh, there she is. Oh, there you are.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, okay, just a little glitch there. I'm still here. So Appendix A in our guide, if you haven't had a chance to look at the guide, but you browse through it, I would point you to Appendix A, because what we have in there is a checklist. So you can actually go through your space, and what it does, it lists the opportunities that we've discussed, and the kind of first steps, things that you can look at if you want to dig a little deeper into the opportunity, and see what is it that I can do when it comes to each of those different aspects, whether it's equipment efficiency, products that you're purchasing, and so on. And then the last slide here is, just gives you a little bit more information. Sorry. Did we swap? I swapped them around. Sorry. Then
Okay.
it's the slide before
Oh,
that.
the slide before here.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry, I got them mixed up. So this just tells you in terms of the initiatives that people are implementing. So the survey respondents saying, 87% have preventative maintenance. We talk about the BAS, the composting, and so forth. One of the things that I thought I'd just mention as well, so the things that where there are lesser people are doing it, so more opportunity to actually explore circular economy in solutions, are in, like I say, selecting products with recyclable content. So it's pretty, particularly when you're thinking of doing a retrofit project or a fit out, there's a lot of alternatives available with recycled content. Looking at solutions where you're actually returning materials to the suppliers, there's also great opportunity in that area. And then lastly, I mentioned before this whole idea of leasing versus purchasing products. So, that's something I think that can be explored a bit more. But I hope that you can see through this discussion that there's a lot that the tenants can do. You represent such a large voice within the buildings, within real estate, that there's great opportunity, I think, to advance if these initiatives. And from my perspective, at BOMA Canada, where we develop tools to support landlords, and we will be developing tools for tenants in the future. But just for now, in terms of our current offerings, the landlord perspective, it's interesting how many times we hear conversations about landlords' hands are tied because tenants control things. So really, bringing all interested parties to the table is critical. So yeah, that's just in summary. And am I still okay for time? I had just wanted to have one more.
Definitely continue because we want to know how we can help you as well. Just give us some ideas of how the attendees today can help you as well.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So what I'll do just to close out the discussions around the guide. So within the BOMA Canada team, advocacy and thought leadership is core to what we do. So we do develop. It's a, I would say, constant process of developing guides. We, as Audrey mentioned to you, we just issued the last week a follow-up guide to this circular economy. There's a little bit more detail in that document about procurement. A lot of the content covered today you will see there as well. We do point to the Resolve framework that talks about actions organizations can take to apply circularity in their work. I won't go into too much detail here, but what I thought was you might be interested also is we do talk about circular economy from the ESG perspective. I know ESG, the environmental, the social, the governance components are also important considerations for people. So then in terms of the insights that that I would really appreciate today is from your perspectives, what do you see as the biggest constraints in implementing initiatives such as circular economy, like call it in the procurement side or on equipment efficiency, whatever of those topics might be important to you, what you would perceive to be the constraints. And also, I think that's my first understanding your constraints. And the second question would be related to how you navigate that landlord-tenant relationship and your ability to influence landlord decisions and so on. Thank you, Audrey.
All right, this is the time where you can unmute and maybe speak to a couple of these points above that indicate that there is action happening. What area would you like to speak to? I'm going to call on Taylor because he has a lot to do with the 50%, 57% of composting.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much. Well, I guess I can only really speak to my story and try and share what I'm seeing. Some news that may be relatively new news to the group is that Canada is making a large move against the compostables product movement, and as new legislation is coming down the pipe that's basically going to require approval, like actual approval for all compostable products. My company makes, or actually we source wood dust that needs to be found a new home and won't be burnt. And we basically upcycle it with a mix of unique minerals that help people compost with it so they don't get fruit flies or deal with the smell of their food waste. And we've launched that product into retail across Canada successfully, and now we're now looking to try and implement what I call our carbon first source separation model to buildings in Canada. And that's a model where wood waste is basically layered in the bottom of the bin prior to any food waste deposits, which naturally, results in a nice carbon nitrogen balance that's a much less unpleasant odor. And our hope is that because we're able to significantly increase the longevity of the equipment that is used to store all this food waste that is currently going very acidic and anaerobic and actually burning through steel, there's a very good cost model in there in order to to actually save money for the waste management haulers themselves. The composting facilities are much happier because they get a much farther along, much better balanced mix, and they already are paying for the wood dust. Tenants are happy because their food waste bin doesn't stink and they don't have fruit fly infestations and the garbage room doesn't stink. If everyone's so separating, so if they're actually everyone's participating, then the garbage shouldn't stink. It should just be the food waste bin that has any odor at all, and that should be the odor of aerobic decomposition. And then finally, that also enables us to eliminate all the waste that currently exists in the system. And so the terminology in the hauling industry is there's a lot of money in empty space. And the reason for that is COVID really revealed this because suddenly offices weren't producing the same level of food waste because no one was going to work, right? But the trucks were still going to pick up and dump empty bins because they were on contract to do so. And so now my team is building a sensor project to actually, do an on-demand compost system where only full bins are picked up and at the preferred time. And ideally, as I think Audrey would like me to say, this would make it not waste at all, but rather, a much better agricultural feedstock. It's much easier to make good compost out of it because the pH in the existing system is not good because it's got so much time building nitrogen, like emitting volatile organic compounds. And that's probably a big monologue about myself, which wasn't really my intention. But, I just think it's a great example of exactly what you're talking about, where we designed the system for the composting facilities and thinking my father was a carpenter and his father was a carpenter. And so I grew up around wood waste, and the whole thing started with trying to find new sources for wood waste. And because we burned it all. And I didn't know that when you burn a ton of wood, you actually create almost 2 tons of CO2 in the atmosphere. And as it turns out, the province of BC burns hundreds of thousands of tons for disposal every year, not even for energy. So because it's cheaper to burn in place than it is anything else. And now we've also got all these forest fires as well. So I'm hoping that all of these things will help us find advocates and help us build that out. So that's my story, and I hope that was helpful.
It's extremely helpful. Yeah, it's like a case study. It's a storytelling case study. Yanni?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that there's just the understanding the challenges around. Well, there's so many different dimensions. It's at and in terms of the waste stream, the different points where the issues arise, so I think it's a very complicated problem, what you've described, and simple solution, but to get it implemented is the challenge, definitely.
Well, wish me luck. I'm meeting with Waste Management tomorrow, so doing my pitch.
Yes.
And Taylor's located in Vancouver?
I'm in Victoria today at my parents'.
Yeah. And so waste management means the municipal waste management team in Victoria?
No, in Vancouver. Specifically, I basically am trying to put together an understanding of what their costs are. It's my understanding they're actually changing out the steel beds of their larger trucks every 2 to 5 years because of the acidity creating so many problems. And so that itself is a huge carbon cost in the manufacturing of that. But more broadly, we have to get the data and understand what is the true longevity increase of having this model fully implemented. And so we're trying to find that perfect partner to help us, who has the resources to help us deploy this. Right now, we're working with hopefully Quadrille Property Management, as we just had a great pilot with one of their buildings.
Yeah, and let us know how that goes. I mean, there might be other groups that
I'll send over to Audrey and she can share around with it.
Yes, definitely. No, I mean that we can have a whole session just about this. So
yeah, exactly.
And I'm happy to have that discussion. But I think I want to hear of some of the other participants as well, if they have some commentary. But this is Yes, I want to hear how they receive it, and then try and see what other ways we can get that solution implemented.
Perfect.
Cool.
I love the fact that your story illustrates collaboration between, you know, building owners, product developers, procurement chains, so supply chains. Like, it is complex, and so we'd love to hear from a few of the others. Does anybody else have a story to share, or some ideas to put forward to deepen this conversation a little bit more? How about you, Harry? You got some questions? If you're able to speak, I know you're in an area where there's background noise, so if you can't, I'll understand.
Well, maybe if from Yanni's perspective, what would you see as being the major obstacle for tenants to get involved in circular economy activities?
I'm the age-old challenge, I think, as a start, is just education and awareness. And, you know, I think that when you transition from, okay, now I know, making that, like I said at the outset, is you have to change your entire way of thinking about product use. I think that a change always takes time. So it's educate yourself, and then find solutions, you know, and I think we will get to some of those case study solutions, because I think you have to explore solutions like what Taylor explained, you know, and people have to be open to trying and testing them. You know, pilots are all the rage in so many different of these new areas. So I would say don't, you know, people might think that, oh, I don't know where to start. Familiarize yourself with the aspects of this topic. You can use our checklist as a start. It says, you know, starting point in that appendix document, and pick one, you know, and look at your organization at a cause that matters to you, and baby steps, you know. But I think something is better than nothing. So don't be overwhelmed by the scale of the challenge. Just think that, what can I do? Is there something I can do?
And on that note, I'm going to bring forward a little story that I have,
Yes.
which is kind of fun. So Harry and I run the ClimateWise Building Challenge, and we have annual awards at the end of each year, and we have quantitative awards based on data collection for energy and greenhouse gas and reduction of those, and you know, you get your award based on the numbers. But then we say there's also going to be some qualitative awards on, you know, what stories can you tell us about what you've achieved, and let us know. And we decided to do one on circular economy. And when I spoke to the town of Newmarket, which are municipal staff, I said to them, so, you know, what have you been doing to increase your, you know, cost savings through an energy reduction? And they said, well, you know, we don't have a very big budget, so we really don't have anything fancy like building automation or new HVAC, or, you know, we just can't afford any of that. And I said, well, what about reuse? Like, you know, that's part of it too. It's not just, you know, buying new things. It's about reusing and being smart about and innovating. And so they said, oh, well, you know, that brings to mind a little project we did, which was totally circular in the respect that, you know, they were told that it was going to cost them, you know, almost $30,000 to replace their pool filter stand at the recreation complex. And because they didn't have the money and they wanted to be innovative, they started researching it. And then they found out that through a new chemical cleaning process, they could actually repurpose that sand filter for the pool, and save themselves, you know, $25,000, and keep 18,500 pounds of sand out of landfill. And they thought they weren't doing anything. So, you know, I had to draw the story out of them. And I guess what I'm saying is, sometimes people are doing the right thing, but they just don't know how to explain that it's circular, maybe because they don't really understand circular economy principles. And they don't realize what an enormous impact that is, and that if they share their story, they would inspire others. So that is our goal with ClimateWise Building Challenge, is, to help get those stories out there and to do the education and the public awareness as we are in this webinar. So that's just one example. And as you mentioned, Yanni, there are other case studies in your new guide that people can look into.
Yeah, the one that I'll just mention here is the this product as a service. So we refer to Philips Paper Lux solution. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but basically it's an example of a transition from selling lamps or light bulbs to selling light hours. And business customers pay a regular fee to Philips to handle their entire lighting service, the design, equipment, installation, maintenance, upgrades, and they only then pay for the light consumed, the lux, so that's a way to then demonstrate how you shift from purchasing a product where you have to worry about all of that maintenance piece and where you're actually procuring the service. Yeah, so I thought I'd just mention that one as well, that I thought was pretty innovative. And it actually builds on the approach that Interface introduced it way back, when we started sustainability discussion. I don't know, it's wrong to say we started it, but it's always part and parcel of the sustainability conversation, hearing about these organizations where, Interface is the carpet manufacturing group, and where they also, instead of selling you carpet tiles, they sell you the whole service, and they come if you see there's a tile that needs replacement, they remove it and bring a new one, and they take care of the full recycling. And just it reinvented their business, changed their economic, or just the value of the company as well, was I think, just increased this. So it just really, when you hear about solutions like that from a sustainability perspective, it requires a new way of thinking, but it's also, then you're like, well, that's a no-brainer. So it's pretty exciting time for me to start exploring these kinds of solutions. And Taylor,
we have a very good segue for you. A question from Gabriella.
Okay,
she would love to know a little bit more about how the circular economy is being used in the new BOMA 4.0 version.
Yes, well, that very good question. And actually, Audrey and I discussed this as we were preparing for this talk as well. So I'm going to dial it or go a little bit back where we are in the stage. So we have different, so in the current BOMA-based version, we have different focus areas, energy, carbon, water. We look at waste, we look at procurement practices and so on. And we've also rolled out or conducted 4 rounds of advisory sessions. So people were looking at specific, we would ask our members, and we reached out to, for every session, about 100 to 150 people, had about 40 to 50 people show up in the sessions, and gather feedback across Canada. So regional representation, asset class representation, experts in the field. And I think I'm getting to answering your question. Our big challenge is that we serve a really wide, and I don't know if that's wide spectrum of a user profile. We have a lot of buildings starting out on their sustainability journey, and then we have those with exceptional performance that have already, they're actively engaging in circular economy discussions. And so when you ask me about how are we framing circular economy in BOMA based, what we're, as much as I want to be aggressive because we have to move the needle. I'm taking my own advice, as I just gave here in the discussion, is that it's incremental steps. The way we're laying out BOMA based is we're saying what are basic practices when it comes to waste management. If I'm coming at this from a sustainability lens, what is my minimum expectation when it comes to waste, the focus area of waste or procurement? And I go, the evolutions of performances, I go from basic, good, better, best, exceptional. And so when I'm dealing with a topic like purchasing, and so I'm interrupting myself, but so let's say from a landlord perspective, I'm asking the question, how are you engaging your waste? How do you decide which waste hauler you're going to engage? And then I'll ask, what is a basic expectation when it relates to waste hauling practices? And what is exceptional? And when it gets to exceptional, it's the sensors and that kind of technology that Taylor mentioned. The fact you're looking for waste haulers that are proactive in thinking about their transportation emissions and solutions in that regard. So, but it's waste management. And if I'm just focusing to answer your question on waste practices, it's so much driven by what your municipality is doing that then I start saying, well, that's again something where the tenant community has a voice. And can we, when you're in a retail shopping center, that retail shopping center, that regional mall is the community hub. And can we ask the landlord in that community to have a conversation with the municipality to say, we can improve our waste management practices? So BOMA base touches, so to answer your question, BOMA base touches on a lot of, the context of waste management procurement practices. We want to try and find a way of reframing the criteria to make people think and take action incrementally to move the needle where they're at and what they can impact. Does that make sense?
Wow, that was a really good summary, Yanni. And so thank you, one, for the question, Gabriela, two, for the answer, Yanni, Taylor, for all your input. We are going to move into the next slides now to just summarize what ClimateWise Building Challenge vision is. Harry, you are the lead on this. If you're in a position to be able to speak, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not in the best comfortable position for everybody because well, we all know what it's been like for the last 2 years, 2.5 years, but the ClimateWise Building Challenge is managed by the ClimateWise Business Network at Windfall Ecology Center, and we're here to support our participants in York Region in being more sustainable. We also have a view that tenants have a significant role to play in this exercise. Yes, there's the building owners and the building managers, but tenants are pivotal in bringing to their landlords and to their owners things that they want to accomplish from the perspective of energy performance and as well as waste management through circularity. So if you can move on to the next slides, Audrey, to close this up. We all know about the benefits of getting involved in climate action. If many of you were involved in the Canadian Climate Change Institute conference yesterday, you heard about some of the action that is happening. People are saving money. They are doing things. They're getting access to incentives. They're engaging employees in doing things, and most importantly, we're building a movement across the country and here in Ontario for climate action. But we need things that allow us to be recognized for these activities and to be able to bring, I think as Yanni said earlier on, attention to the achievements that organizations have made. So our slide that we're talking about next, Audrey, speaks to getting recognized at our York Region Sustainability Awards events, which we just had this last fall here in Aurora, where we recognized building owners and tenants such as CIBC for doing things. And our key activity right now that we're involved in is building a tenant space recognition program. And if you look at our next slide, we have just initiated a pilot project, if you change the slides, please, that basically hopefully is an end to the journey in terms of getting recognized for their achievements. And this is focused dominantly on tenants. So the US has a program called Tenant Space Recognition through the US Energy Star Portfolio Manager, EPA, that EPA manages. And we're trying to work with Natural Resources Canada. In fact, we have an arrangement with Natural Resources Canada to do a pilot project here in Ontario under the auspices of our ClimateWise Building Challenge to identify and recognize tenants in office buildings and retail spaces for their efforts in taking action on climate change. Right now, it has an energy performance associated with it, but once they have set up an Energy Star Portfolio Manager account, they get all the functionality of those accounts, including waste and water management. And we could start to bring to them practices such as the BOMA guide that they can consider and to be recognized for their efforts. Our challenge right now is finding tenants to participate in our pilot project, because once we find those tenants, we want to provide an opportunity for them to participate in the project and test how it works for them, and then provide some feedback to Natural Resources Canada on the success of the program. So the next slide, because I know our time is here, we need to wrap up on this. Yeah. We have a bunch of participants now that gives you a sample as to who they are that are involved in our tenant space recognition program and the activities we're doing in ClimateWise Building Challenge overall. If you have other next slide, others that you can recommend to get involved in the tenant space recognition program by joining the challenge, please let them know that this is available to them. We're willing then to talk to them on a one-on-one basis how a building owner or a property manager can get their tenants involved in an Energy Star program. At least initially, we're evolving it to an Energy Star program. Right now, it's a tenant space recognition under the ClimateWise Building Challenge. So, Audrey, I'll let you finish off or any closing remarks, and then I need to move to another session here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Harry. We know you're sitting in the hallway waiting to go into a board meeting. Thank you so much for sticking it out right up until your board meeting starts. Yanni, amazing getting to know you. Thank you so much for all the wealth of information and to know the good work that BOMA is doing. We really are very excited to know that your guide is going to push the needle on expectations of circular economy practices within the real estate and commercial building environment. You know, everyone keeps saying it again and again, you know, buildings are 40% of our GHG emissions. Let's get on it. So it's good that we've got some experts working so hard to make this happen, and we'll do our very best to support you in every way we can, Yanni. So
thank you. Thank you. No, it's a team effort.
Yeah.
Can't do this alone.
Well, collaboration. Yes. You know, it starts at the local level, but it's got to become, you know, a network of collaborators internationally, really, to get us to move faster, for sure.
Yes.
So thank you, everyone.
Perfect.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Look forward to doing another session next year.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, Taylor, are you still there? No? Time to stop the recording.